All right, guys. I want to talk about mental resiliency. And I personally think that mental resiliency is a key component to becoming successful. When I say successful, I'm not talking about monetary success, I'm talking about goal attainment, right? So, any kind of goal attainment requires that we are psychologically ready to engage in any obstacle, okay? And that requires us to be resilient against hardship. Every single obstacle that we go through is going to challenge us. If it's not really a big goal. It's not, everything. Think of any successful person, whether it's a basketball player or a business, professional, anybody that has succeeded in anything that is big, a writer, or anything. Just think about all the obstacles that they had to go through. A lot of these obstacles are obstacles that would have been debilitating for the regular person. So any kind of goal attainment, if you're pursuing any kind of goal, whether it's weight loss or if it is monetary or professionally, it's going to require that we become resilient to the challenge. Okay, so this is something I call stress inoculation. It's not a term I made up. It's actually a real scientific term, right? So, for instance, the resiliency comes from exposure to these challenges, which creates that stress inoculation. So, for instance, somebody that has a hard time going to the gym, it's uncomfortable, right? I've actually trained people that have done a workout for one day, and they were sore or whatever, and they just stopped from there. It has happened, and I'm sure it happens not just with my case scenario. I'm sure it happens to tons of people out there, right? And it's just uncomfortable, right? Whether it's a physical strain or psychological strain. I know people that won't even step into a gym because they don't know what to do. It feels awkward. So that stops them, right? So in this case, to me, that's it's almost a lack of resiliency, because these are challenges that comes forward, and they're unable to move forward because of this discomfort. As little and as minor as it might seem, it's a discomfort that they're not willing to go over. So that's just a small example. Okay, so if you're talking about a big goal, building $1 million business, or getting that dreamed of six pack or whatever, is gonna require a little bit more effort, and a lot more challenges, right? It's not going to be just the discomfort of the gym. It's not going to be the discomfort of not knowing what to do, or the awkwardness. You're going to have to figure out your diet. You're going to have to figure out a plan. You're going to have to figure out a routine. You're going to have to do it. You're going to have to engage in that pain every day. Now, with mental resiliency, you're going to be able to, to go through that and do that every day. And actually, the funny thing is, you're actually going to enjoy it. Okay, so a lot of times, anybody that's starting out anything, there's this challenge. But as you progress and you push forward and push forward and push forward, you actually tend to like it, and you actually kind of get upset when you don't get it, when you're not in the gym and working out. So eventually, people end up loving this thing that was once difficult. So turning that stress into nullifying it almost. Right. So when I first started doing my runs in the cold, I had to negotiate with myself, oh, it's so cold outside, and it was just a struggle. Every morning I'd look outside the window, and there would be snow outside. Cars were buried in snow, and I said to myself, okay, I can easily just wipe off the car and hop in a car and drive to work, and eventually I just had to convince myself, I had to calm my mind, settle my mind, silence it, this naysayer in my head, not a person physically outside, but as a naysayer in my head. I had to shut it up, and then, put on the boots, get outside, feel the weather, and then I did that over and over again, and then, one of the goals I hitting a new personal record was, going minus 30, shirtless, right? And yeah, it's on my Instagram. Minus 30. I'm out there. I'm running shirtless, right? So check that out if you want, right? But yeah, so I mean that was inoculated. I had to like overcome that. And the interesting thing is, the body is so capable and so adaptable that it will adjust, right? And this challenge that we thought was so daunting and so scary at one point, it's not as big as it seems. It actually gets smaller, and it might truly be big. I mean, you can't walk into a gym and never have gone to the gym and want to lift 300 pounds, but over time this thing gets smaller and your enjoyment grows drastically more and more. So like mental resiliency, stress inoculation, post-traumatic growth, like these are terms that I like to play with. And especially the people that I follow, you see them really enjoying the hardship, the challenge. In fact, they seek it, right? They've learned to grow and love the difficulties, right? Things that would normally cause severe stress for some people, right? So it's a very stoic principle. I love stoicism.
Right here is busy road, but for those of you guys who know stoicism, this for me is going to be like smashing lentil soup.
Their philosophy, to really do just small things. So, and I've done some of their things, like sleep on the ground. I've done that. I've slept in the ground of my kid's room. I've done that before. Just because, right? Because once the whole stoic principle of doing these things is that once you've done it, you realize it's not that bad, right? So what the Stoics would talk about doing stuff like that, like sleeping on the ground. So they would have this perception that if they lost everything, it's not that bad, right? So in a sense, it's kind of like showing you that like you could do that, right? So if I'm on a run, sometimes when I'm tired, I'll actually push harder, right? So that way, when I slow down to my regular pace, it actually feels good, right? That becomes my resting pace, right? So things like that. When you learn to do, have that stress inoculation, there's a whole book, The Upside of Stress, and it talks about the whole science of stress inoculation. The funny thing is, with the science for stress, and stress is bad for you. Don't get me wrong about that. But it's perception. Again, it's like the person that goes to the gym and loves it. That's a stress. It doesn't matter what you say. Once you go to the gym and you're working out, it's going to raise your cortisol, right? You're going to be taken out of that anabolic state, so your body's going to be breaking down. So it's stress. Once your cortisol level raises, it's stress. But psychologically, if you can actually take yourself out of that, your cortisol level will reduce a lot quicker. So for instance, if you're meditating, right, then it lowers your cortisol as an example, because you're calming yourself. So when I'm looking out the window, my cortisol is raising, right? I'm getting stressed, right? And then I'll calm myself down, and then all of a sudden, I feel calm, and that stress is gone, as an example, right? So it's a lot of stress is actually perceptive. And when they were doing stress science back in the day, when they first did it, they put these mice under retarded, circumstances, like swimming, for hours without stop, at a time, and then they would measure stress levels and biomarkers and say that stress is bad for you. But we as human beings on a day to day, we would never be under that condition. So, chronic stress is what is bad. So what they would do is they would test these mice or rats or whatever under chronic stress conditions and say that it's bad, right? Stress is bad for people. But in all honesty, stress is good for you because it grows you, makes you better, makes you more resilient, actually. So the more resilient you are, the less you are affected by stress. And that's the cool part. You don't want to be affected by stress. You need to get stressed controllably, right? So and that's exactly what my class is about. My class is about that. I put people under stress, but it's controlled stress. When you watch my video, you'll notice that he likes this stress. He's creating a new mindset, a new conditioning that this stress is good for him. And when he engages in things, these stressful situations aren't so bad, right? So yeah, so that's the whole thing. We got to put ourselves under stress. Okay, so anyways, that's 10 minutes. Check out my work for my next year's class. If you guys are local in the Calgary area, right, I'm going to put on 50% off for anybody that's locally here in Calgary that wants to have an experience to inoculate stress, reduce stress through becoming stronger, through being better able to engage in stress. Again, like 50% off. Put in the coupon code, get some exclamation mark, and then we'll get you 50% off for next year's course. Next year, hope to see you guys there. All right, see you later.